Good afternoon, everyone. And listen, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to participate in Power Talks and to speak to speak to all of you, presumably many of you from Saskatchewan, a place where I've been spending an increasing amount of time because of the exciting activity and development and leadership that Saskatchewan and Sask Power and some of the major corporations involved in the nuclear sector in Saskatchewan are taking. In fact, I'm going to be back in Saskatchewan at least 2 times over the next 4 weeks or so, and always enjoy my time there. Today, I'm going to be speaking about nuclear writ large in Canada, but I'm going to take the opportunity as well to talk about some of the very interesting dynamics around nuclear in Saskatchewan, and I hope some of the opportunities that are available to the province as they explore options to become not only such a significant producer of uranium, which you have been for many years now, but to expand that activity and potentially become the next province that is a nuclear producer of power, and to achieve all of the benefits of that, and of course to answer questions that you may have. So I am going to try to share my screen here and bring us through a presentation, and then I'll come back to you. And as I said, I'm hoping to engage in a great discussion. So here we go. Let's hope the technology works. All right, so hopefully you're seeing the presentation clearly now on your screens, and I'll bring us through this at a fairly rapid clip so that we can get into a discussion. So a little bit about the Canadian Nuclear Association. We've been around for just over 60 years now, which is a long reflects the long history and leadership that Canada has shown in the safe generation and management of nuclear facilities. Our job is to ensure that there's increased awareness of what's going on in the nuclear sector and the many advantages that the sector can deliver to Canadians as we strive to meet our goals, whether they be economic or energy security or from a climate point of view, because of course nuclear is a non-emitting technology. And as you'll see later on in the presentation, when I discuss a bit about the recent developments, a very significant momentum that nuclear power is experiencing globally and in particular here at home in Canada, you'll see that we're moving from a period of really trying to increase awareness about the real facts behind nuclear and all of its benefits, and now with the incredible support we're receiving as an industry, we're moving into actually getting it done and building out projects, both large and small, and so I'll be speaking about that. So just a word about nuclear writ large here in Canada, some notable facts for you. Starting with, of course, Saskatchewan being the second largest producer exporter of uranium in the world. And because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the implications that has for the world on so many levels from an energy security point of view, and including uranium supply, the countries in the Western world in particular have been increasingly looking to Saskatchewan and to incredible companies like Cameco to be increasing the amount of uranium it is supplying to these world markets. And I can tell you that Tim Gitzel over there at Cameco and the CEOs of the other uranium companies, large and small, are in high gear right now, ensuring that all of our allied countries are entering into agreements for secure uranium supply in light of Russia's actions. And so it's an area of big growth. Nuclear power generation in Canada is very significant, right? 15% of Canada's electricity needs. Right now, that is concentrated in two provinces. Ontario, of course, where we get about 60% of our electricity from nuclear power, and we have for over 60 years, and New Brunswick as well, which is getting about a third of its power from its nuclear plant. It employs a lot of people in this industry, about 76,000 Canadians, and contributes about $17 billion to the GDP each year, so very significant in that sense. A part that people sometimes overlook is the innovation and the importance of Canada's role through the nuclear sector in supplying medical isotopes and its leadership in nuclear medicine generally. Canada has for many years now been the world's foremost supplier of some very important types of isotopes. This range of isotopes that we provide for things like sterilizing medical equipment or identifying symptoms related to cancer and other diseases, et cetera, is expanding quite a bit because of the amount of innovation that's going on through our laboratories. And now through the ability to be able to harness new types of isotopes through existing operating plants, area of big growth and important service for the rest of the world, and an area in which we're doing some very exciting things. I should also mention that despite Canada being relatively small from a population point of view, we were one of the first nations to start generating power from nuclear. We've exported our own technology to 6 different countries, and we're regarded as a very top tier country in the nuclear business. And so from that perspective, it's something that Canada is very proud of, but also an area where we can really continue to show leadership and contribute in today's world where we need clean and secure power. So a little bit about Canada's native technology here, the CANDU technology, which I'm sure all of you have heard of. It's using unenriched uranium, which has been a beneficial attribute for our nuclear technology in terms of other nations wanting to adopt it. It's very convenient for us, of course, with Saskatchewan producing natural uranium and us being able to use it. It has a number of advantages, our technology, in terms of the efficiency of operations and the incredible safety record that we have as a nation in operating these plants. One of the biggest projects going on in Canada right now, if not the biggest, is the refurbishment of 10 of our units at Darlington and Bruce Nuclear Generating Station. These refurbishments, about halfway through, are continuing on time and on budget, and they are fueling an incredibly strong nuclear industry, the basis on which we're doing a lot of innovation around things like small modular reactors and other pretty exciting developments, which we're going to speak about. But the bottom line here is we're taking this long and strong expertise in nuclear to extend the life of our existing plants in Ontario to about 2060 and beyond, and at the same time innovate so that we can move into new technologies and into other provinces and sectors. So one of the areas, of course, that Canada is known for in terms of innovation is its leadership in the development of small modular reactors. So quickly, what are small modular reactors and why are they a bit different from the conventional reactors that we're more familiar with? Well, first of all, rather than being a large infrastructure project, these are largely manufactured either in whole or in components in a manufacturing setting and then shipped to site and assembled in a modular way. Some of them are so small, as a matter of fact, that they can be fit on the back of 18-wheelers and actually shipped to site, which is quite incredible. The smallest ones are around 5 megawatts electric, and they can become as large as 300 megawatt electric. And I'm going to be speaking about the 300 megawatt one, which are usually connected to the electricity grid, because SaskPower envisions rolling out a number of these units and distributing them around the province to be able to provide clean, reliable electricity at really advantageous spots around the province. But there are two other categories of small modular reactors. One which is sort of a mid-size, you might call it 60 to 100 megawatts. And those ones produce very, very high temperature heat, which is terrific in terms of being able to use it for industrial applications. Whether it's creation of steel or cement or potash, you can use it in the extraction of oil and gas to replace the industrial heat that is normally used. And it does that on top of providing electricity. And they're very flexible as well. So you could be producing hydrogen at the same time as electricity and using the industrial heat. Most of the models are very responsive in terms of being able to follow load, and in electricity speak, that means that it creates lots of opportunities for more wind and solar to come onto the system, because these small modular reactors can ramp up and down very quickly to accommodate the periods when wind and solar are not producing as much or any electricity from the wind and the sun. The other great thing about small modular reactors is you can sort of build them up slowly at a particular site. So as electricity demand grows, you can add the units one after the other. And of course, the promise of small modular reactors is that because they are manufactured and then brought together on site, it's a very predictable pricing, and shows that it's going to be competitive with other sources of electricity. In many instances, I'm thinking of northern communities and mining sites right off the bat, and then as we get into producing multiple units, the cost comes down very considerably and is competitive with all other sources of electricity. So what about small modular reactors in Saskatchewan? First of all, a brilliant fit here, right, with the global leadership that Saskatchewan has as a uranium producer. Excuse me. And now, of course, with the targets that we have as a nation in terms of phasing out fossil fuel-fired electricity generation and replacing it with carbon-free electricity generation, small modular reactors become a very scalable way, a very flexible way of replacing the baseload power that Saskatchewan currently gets from coal and gas-fired electricity generation. As I said, in addition to creating electricity, it is also a great fit, especially the micro reactors, the smaller ones, for some of the First Nations populations living in remote communities that are currently using diesel-fired plants. And as I said, right off the bat, we're probably looking at between 20 and 60% savings switching to an SMR away from a diesel generator. And you're talking about very dependable, clean electricity that can provide not just the electricity and the electrons themselves, but also use the heat either for the heating of buildings or use them in industrial processes or even create hydrogen. So lots of potential because of the flexibility of these small modular reactors. And I have to say, Lara mentioned that I come from the renewables sector originally. The nuclear sector, so strong here in Canada, right, and encompasses all of the aspects, the full life cycle of nuclear operation, everything from the mining through to the supply chain, which is creating the components for nuclear, through to the operation. I mean, the utilities that operate these things with real expertise, and even decommissioning, and all of the associated ecosystem, whether it's the Canadian nuclear laboratories, the academia that is involved in nuclear. So my point being that Canada has a almost self-contained nuclear ecosystem, and every activity that we perform here, whether it's building new nuclear in Saskatchewan or providing more uranium to existing plants in Eastern Canada, to the innovation that we're doing in medical isotopes and nuclear medicine, all of that economic benefit stays here. We're not going out to China or other countries to, to bring in equipment and relying on foreign supply chains. And so that's why you see this incredible amount of economic benefit that comes to Canada and Saskatchewan already through uranium mining, but hopefully also through the adoption of new nuclear. And we're talking about some big numbers here in terms of the economic benefit that could come back to Saskatchewan.
John,
Yeah.
we're going to have we have a couple questions coming in right now, and I just wanted to give you a bit of a 2-minute or a 1-minute warning, and then I'll maybe open the floor up a little bit if you're okay with that.
Sure, that sounds good. So
Okay.
I think we've touched on uranium already, second largest exporter in the world. I had the opportunity to tour Cigar Lake recently, and what an incredible operation that is driven by some outstanding engineering work and tradespeople, miners from Saskatchewan. I think we've touched a little bit here on the economic benefits that could be accruing to Saskatchewan and are already accruing to Ontario in terms of dollars and jobs. So certainly a great reason to be diversifying what Saskatchewan is doing and building upon its uranium sector. The federal support, which I'm sure we'll get into during some of our conversations, there's been an absolute turning point in terms of the federal government's support, recognizing nuclear as clean and pivotal to a net zero future, and supporting it in all sorts of ways. And I have to say that Saskatchewan's leadership in terms of pushing the federal government to recognize the sort of economic and benefits and energy security benefits that could accrue to Saskatchewan has been instrumental in terms of influencing the government there. And the federal budget came out with very significant tax credits to support the development and deployment of small modular reactors, including in Saskatchewan. And in particular, I'll just mention on this slide the ability of organizations like SaskPower to be able to take advantage of these tax credits for nuclear, which get passed on directly as energy savings to the people of Saskatchewan. So here's just a quick example of the sort of momentum that Saskatchewan has been able to achieve and has been lending to other jurisdictions in Canada, in particular Saskatchewan's leadership in bringing together Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and New Brunswick in terms of a common path forward for the development and deployment of small modular reactors has been incredible. And we'll talk a little bit later, maybe in the questions and answers, about the technology that Saskatchewan is starting with. It's called the GE Hitachi 300 megawatt unit. It will be connected to the electricity grid. I think there's 4 units that Saskatchewan is considering right now. And the beauty about this technology is that it's the lowest risk one, I would say, in terms of maturity, but also it's this incredible partnership that SaskPower and Ontario Power Generation have achieved, which means that SaskPower will be following Ontario Power Generation's lead with the same technology, and it means that it significantly de-risks things for Saskatchewan while opening up all sorts of potential benefits. So that's the presentation that I have today. I'm happy to engage in a discussion.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I did notice one in the chat, so for everybody else, please put them into that Q&A part, just because that way I'll just watch one thread. But I think this question was when you were touching on small modular reactors.
Mm-hmm.
How does their ramp rate compare to conventional boiler turbine generator units?
So the answer to that question, it depends on which technology, which SMR technology is being used and adopted. And as I said, there are a number of different technologies that Canada is in the process of developing and deploying right now. The smaller ones, whether they're 5 megawatts or even the mid-sized ones, the ones that are 60 to 100 megawatts, are very, very responsive. So to my understanding, as responsive as a gas plant would be in terms of being able to meet the demand the demand variance in, let's say, renewable electricity from wind and solar. So, just to finish off on that, Lara, one of the keys to Saskatchewan's approach, to SaskPower's approach here, is to bring in small modular reactors as a way of not only decarbonizing the current electricity system, but providing that base load, that clean base load of power that is responsive, so that Saskatchewan can, if it chooses, bring on more wind and solar. It's an enabler of additional sources of clean electricity.
Thank you. Can you comment on the different types of uranium fuels for different reactor technology? I think furthermore, like, does the uranium produced in Saskatchewan fit all reactor technologies?
No, it doesn't. That's a very, very interesting question, and an important one. So our conventional CANDU technologies have used unenriched uranium. And the uranium is mined here in Canada, is processed and used directly in the existing operating plants. All of the small modular reactor technologies that are being developed and deployed worldwide now use a slightly enriched form of uranium. And depending on which SMR technology it is, that could range from, let's say, 5% enriched, which is what the GE Hitachi model that SaskPower is envisioning as the first small modular reactors to come online will use. And they can go up as high as 19% enriched. But they're limited to that amount of enrichment to ensure there's no danger of any sort of use of that fuel for anything other than producing clean power.
Oh, thank you. Can the GE Hitachi unit that we've selected for further evaluation be used for producing heat for industrial purposes?
So yes, it can. I think this is a nuanced answer again, and I'm not the technical expert in GE Hitachi, but I certainly encourage people to go to their site or reach out to SaskPower or others for real technical data on it. But all of the small modular reactors produce an enhanced or higher temperature heat. But then when you get into the different technologies, Lara, some of them produce higher temperature heat than others. And so there will be limiting factors depending on which one is being used. The GE Hitachi is producing a high temperature heat that is good for some applications. And now my understanding is they're exploring options for increasing that heat so that it could cover all sorts of applications for industrial heat.
Oh, I see. Switching gears, we had somebody remarking, they're just curious, have you looked at a partnership with Russia in building nuclear power plants like France now has? And they're citing World Nuclear News. So France is supplying controls and Russia is building the main plants in third countries right now. I'm not, yeah, any perspective on that?
Another amazing question. So, the short answer is no. Canada is not collaborating in any way with Russia in terms of developing small modular reactor technology, and the dynamic that has been created with Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been one that has separated the free world, if I could call it that, and the Western nations from Russia in terms of any sort of nuclear collaboration on the nuclear power front. So I would say that instead what's been happening now is a number of nations have turned to Canada to be supplying their uranium and have turned away from Russia. And there is a very coordinated, concerted effort going on by Western nations, if I could call them that, to ensure that we have the entire nuclear fuel supply chain in the hands of our allied countries. And so that's where this incredible work that's being done by companies like Cameco and also between the government of Canada and the United States has been working on creating a nuclear ecosystem that is completely independent of Russia.
Okay, so to follow up, or maybe just to clarify, is Canada capable of uranium enrichment, or what does that future plan look like? What are you seeing?
Well, another great question. I mean, I think Canada has to, carefully consider whether or not it wants to complete that fuel cycle itself in terms of taking the natural uranium resources that we have and doing the that low assay enrichment of the fuel. But I think what's making more sense in the shorter term, certainly, and maybe even the short to medium term, is creating a nuclear fuel ecosystem with the United States, which already has enrichment capabilities, whereby Canada's supplying the uranium, and any enrichment that has to be done for future types of nuclear power plants is being done in the United States. And so creating that kind of ecosystem, which is the current goal. Whether or not Canada, over the longer term decides to create complete independence in terms of that fuel cycle is something that's going to be worked through a number of years.
One of our viewers remembered reading that SMRs could use spent nuclear fuel, is how they framed it, from other reactors like CANDU, I suspect. Is this true? And could the Hitachi unit use this fuel?
So it is true that there are new technologies being developed, including one here in Canada called Moltex, a molten salt reactor, which is capable of using the spent fuel from CANDU reactors and reusing it, and taking down the amount of volume that there is of spent fuel from the CANDU reactors and using that spent fuel as a resource, and also doing some promising things to the sort of longevity of how long that spent fuel is radioactive. So that is a promising technology. That being said, it doesn't change the fact that we need in Canada a permanent storage solution for all waste, whether it's waste that's and spent fuel that's been recycled, or whether it's just straight spent fuel from the CANDU reactors. So in Ontario, there are two finalist communities that are looking at being the recipient of a deep geological repository that's basically storing the fuel in rock that hasn't moved for 4 billion years, essentially, to store it there permanently, and it will become the repository for all spent fuel, whether it's produced in Saskatchewan or Alberta or Ontario or New Brunswick.
So we've got about one more minute left, and maybe I'll pivot from some of these technical questions to something that I think about often. I'm seeing in my work day to day increased expectations on engagement, on consultation, and certainly within regulatory processes. And when I think about this, John, it doesn't necessarily lend itself well to moving quickly to hit net zero 2035 targets. I'm curious, what's your perspective on this?
Well, I think it's an enormous challenge, Lara, and I think you've identified, what could be the central challenge to Canada as we go forward to build new infrastructure generally. I mean, we have this target now of a net zero 2050 future. That's going to mean doubling just in the electricity space. Not talking about pipelines or development of new mines or transmission lines. I mean, just in electricity generation, we're going to have to double or triple the amount of electricity that we generate. All of it will have to be emissions free, which means big projects, whether it's nuclear or more water power, wind and solar, etc., transmission lines, and if we don't get this right, if we don't manage to streamline the process and how long it takes to get anything built in this country, we're not going to be able to build out the clean infrastructure that we need to make this transition. So the nuclear industry is laser focused in working with its regulator, the federal regulator, and with the Impact Assessment Agency and with the provinces to ensure that we can get this ballooning number of infrastructure projects that have to be built out done in a way that's efficient while still respecting stakeholders and bringing in the partnerships that we really want and need in the leadership of Indigenous peoples, etc. So we have to respect all of that and at the same time find a way to get these things built faster.
Hey, Thank you so much for your time and your participation, John, and to all of our guests who've come to take in the session. It is 12:52, so it's time to move on to your next session. John will be here for maybe a couple more minutes if there was something just to follow up. But thank you again, John, for joining us, and thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks. Great questions, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity.